This webinar is the first in a series designed to gather, synthesize, and amplify insights on key topics related to forest ecosystem services, governance, and nature-based markets. Also, these webinars are closely linked to the INTERCEDE Transdisciplinary Forum, which will bring together researchers, practitioners, policymakers, and other stakeholders to work collaboratively on the project's major themes. And all of the insights shared today will directly feed into these discussions, helping ensure that the Transdisciplinary Forum benefits from a broad audience and a diversity of perspectives beyond the in-person event. So now I will leave the floor to our first presenters, ElenaGórriz, Mifsud, and Ibtissem, with their work towards a comprehensive overview of market-based instruments for forest ecosystem services across Europe.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ibtissem Taghouti, and our head of group, ElenaGórriz, Mifsud, also is joining us today in this presentation. So with her, I will briefly share some insights from our work on market-based instruments for forest ecosystem services across Europe. Our presentation is structured in two parts. First, I will introduce the concept of market-based instruments and give an overview of the INTERCEDE database, which compiles different instruments related to forest ecosystem services across Europe. Then Elena will present examples of inspiring instruments emerging from this overview. Let me start with a quick explanation of the methodology we employ to map these instruments. So why do we need market-based instruments for forest ecosystem services? Actually, forests provide a wide range of ecosystem services that are essential for both the environment and society. They help regulate the climate and store carbon, maintain water quality and quantity also, and availability. They support the biodiversity, protect soils, and contribute to landscape and cultural values. Forests also play an important role in reducing risks such as floods and wildfires. However, from a policy perspective, there is an important challenge. Many of these ecosystem services are public goods. This means they are not usually reflected in market prices, so they tend to be undervalued and often under-provided. And forest owners may have limited economic incentives to maintain or enhance them. So for that reason, there is a growing interest in economic incentives and market-based instruments to help support the provision of these services. Okay, across Europe, several mechanisms exist already to fund forest ecosystem services through market-based instruments, but the available knowledge is still quite fragmented. We identified different databases collecting case studies such as PINE, Sincere, Pest for Water, and other European projects. But they are different in terms of scope, level of detail, and geographic coverage, which makes so the comparison really difficult. To address this, in INTERCEDE project, we created a database which currently includes 84 verified cases from 19 European countries. And we went through several steps to reach this stage, from creating a multidisciplinary analytical framework. Then we organized various expert workshops. We also tried to internally verify and screen all identified database. We reached then the testing, and now the database hopefully is released last year. So the main objective of this database is to systematically identify and describe MBIs for forest ecosystem services across Europe. Also, it would facilitate the comparison between instruments and support policy learning and replication of successful cases. Okay, before presenting the database, let me briefly clarify what we mean by market-based instruments. In general, MBIs use economic incentives and price signals to influence behavior and improve environmental outcomes. And there is no signal universally agreed definition, but in the INTERCEDE project, we follow the understanding proposed by Pirard and Lapeyre, who describe MBIs as transactions involving a price that reflects a monetary value aimed at improving environmental outcomes by influencing the supply or demand of ecosystem services. So based on this approach, Pirard distinguishes 6 main types of market-based instruments. We have regulatory price signals, such as taxes, fees, or subsidies. We have tradable permits and offsets, for example, carbon markets, direct markets for ecosystem services, reverse auctions for environmental contracts, Gaussian type agreements such as POS and voluntary price signals, including certification schemes. Overall, these instruments aim to create economic incentives that help to align the supply and demand of forest ecosystem services. Now let's move to the overview. As you can see in this slide, we can see the distribution of 84 market-based instruments included in our database. And we asked experts who helped us to characterize these instruments to include at least 1 or 2 cases per country to ensure representation. And the most important for us was to have relevant cases with enough information for our analysis. So in Southern Europe, we have Spain, Italy, Greece, and Portugal. Then we have other countries from Eastern Europe, Western Central Europe, and Northern Europe. So in total, we have 19 countries. Okay, the number of instruments actually is increasing rapidly in Europe. Starting from 1994, we identified 17 cases. Then in the next period, the number has doubled almost compared to the previous period. Okay, what are the main ecosystem services targeted by these instruments in Europe? So our initial findings show that the most frequently targeted forest ecosystem services are combined FES bundles, followed by biodiversity enhancement, wildfire risk, mitigation, and carbon sequestration. Here, as you can see, this is the distribution of MBIs per country and main ecosystem services targeted. So primary land management actions supported by MBIs focus first on afforestation and then on halting harvesting. Across these cases, interventions actually cover roughly 5.5 million hectares and involve around 89,000 land managers.
Sorry, Ibti, just to mention that these are very conservative figures, because for some of the instruments we didn't have the figures, and this is the figures at the annual level. So this means that each year there are this number of beneficiaries. Yeah, so it's not the accumulative all this period that Ibtissem was presenting before.
Thank you, Elena. Okay. In this figure shows the area covered by different ecosystem services across identified instruments measured in hectares. From the chart, we can clearly see that production of food and biomass covers the largest area, reaching close 800,000 hectares, and this indicates that provisioning services related to forest resources are the dominant, let's say, ecosystem function in this landscape. The second most extensive service is water quality regulation, which covers roughly 350,000 hectares, and this highlights the important role of this AOS. Other services also, such as biodiversity conservation, carbon sequestration, wildfire mitigation, and FES combinations, cover comparatively smaller area compared to the previous AOS.
And here sometimes it's difficult to assess the hectares because in some instruments they report the tons of carbon, but not the hectares that are implied. So again, probably these are very conservative estimations. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Okay. I will move to the next figure. This presents actually the distribution of funding allocated to different ecosystem services and their MBIs scheme. And as you can see, multifunctional land management receives the largest share of funding, accounting for about half of the total budget. And this indicates that the MBI strongly prioritizes land management approaches that can deliver multiple ecosystem services simultaneously, such as biodiversity protection, climate regulation, and sustainable resource use. The second largest allocation is dedicated to biodiversity, highlighting the importance of conserving species and habitats within the funding framework. And it's important also to note that the data shown here correspond to the latest available financial year. So based on this data set, the total identified budget amounts to approximately 341 million euros per year. Okay. Here we have the classification by MBI type. So the most frequent one is the regulatory prices are voluntary for land managers funded from public money via open calls or through earmarked taxes. No cases of development right, all carbon credits, insurance premiums, or impact investments were found. Direct markets mostly concern access rights. Voluntary price signals or labeling are mainly certification FSC or PFC. Tradable permits are used for compensating ecosystem services losses, carbon credits, for example. And the last one is not least, cohesion agreements include land stewardship and an important instrument in Portugal, the Portuguese green Hertzkork. Regarding reverse auctions, were found in only 5 cases. On price setting, most MBIs actually rely on unilateral pricing by the buyer or payer. Here we have 40 cases. A smaller but significant share, 19 cases, established the price through a negotiated agreement between parties. Primary payers are public, dominated by public actors, 47 cases. And in terms of administrative scale, most MBIs operate at the state level in 37 cases. On this slide, we summarize how payments for land management or ecosystem services are structured. So first, the payment rationale is mostly based on variables related to the land managers themselves. This typically includes 2 components, the partial costs of land management, which are the direct expenses they incur, and lost income, which compensates for any income they give up to implement environmentally friendly practices. So second, there is a social value-based approach, but we see it only in few cases. We have just 4, if I'm not mistaken. So here payments are determined more by the benefits to society rather than direct costs to the land managers. And third, we have opportunity costs, which represent the value of alternative use of the land. In 45 cases, this aspect was not studied. So there is a big gap here in our understanding, and this should be developed in the literature. And finally, regarding sanctions, when compliance is not met, the measures are typically monetary penalties. So overall, most schemes focus on compensating land managers for their costs or income losses, while approaches based on social value or opportunity costs are far less common. On this slide, we summarize the criteria related to forest habitats and applicant selection for these programs. First, the type of forest habitat. So any habitat can be eligible in the initial stage, meaning there is a broad inclusion. In some cases, there is strategic zoning, where certain areas are prioritized based on ecological importance or program goals. And there is a particular attention to upstream forests or old growth areas, recognizing then their critical role in ecosystem services and biodiversity. And second, the applicant selection. Yeah, there may be spatial requirements ensuring that selected land parcels meet specific size or connectivity criteria to maximize ecological impact. On this slide, we look at the MBIs are linked to the broader policy framework. First, the link to regulation. In 34 cases, MBIs are explicitly tied to regulation, meaning the program operates within a formal legal framework. And second, control and enforcement. Yes. Here in how many? 39 cases, compliance is ensured through field controls conducted by public authorities, which this should help to guarantee that participants meet the required standards and so on. Here I leave the floor to Elena.
If you can pass, thank
Yes.
you, Ibti. Here I wanted to mention just a few. How many minutes do we still have, Maria?
10.
Hello, Maria? Yes, sorry, I just was putting my mic on. You still have enough time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So then, as regulatory price signals, probably these are the more traditional instruments, which are typically subsidies. For some of you, this might not be like very innovative, but the design of the instruments is changing also over time. So we have the typical subsidies from within the rural development policy, and the programs that most of the European countries that belong to the European Union have, because also we have to say that we have some countries that are beyond the European Union. And then there are some commonalities across countries regarding the measures that are implemented in terms of afforestation, hazards mitigation, environmental forestry commitments, or also, well, so these are the main, let's say, ones that are targeting ecosystem services that go beyond the traditional wood production. These have a long trajectory. Probably the institutional framework is quite adapted already to it. And by far, they have the largest annual funding. So, and their lessons learned are very interesting in order to apply other mechanisms. But also we have earmarked taxes in some countries, like the Croatian green tax, the Slovenian forest tax, the Portuguese forest fund, or the Lombardy green fund. So these are applied in different countries, and basically they collect funding from different taxpayers or sources, and the correction in tax has to do with the personal taxes. The Slovenian forest tax is more on the forestry interventions. Forest fund in Portugal is funded by the petrol tax, or the Lombardy Green Fund is based on land consumption due to development, urban expansion projects mainly. So this all brings money to some fund that is later reorganized and, let's say, using this funding for some forest improvement. So that's very interesting initiatives. If you can pass to the next one. Then we have some voluntary price signals, mainly certification, the two biggest ones that are present in all the countries. We have been analyzing them in detail only in a few countries, but actually we are aware that these are everywhere in all the countries with more or less extension. But what is interesting is that despite they are said to improve the payment, the price, or the main focus initially was the landowner gains a bonus, let's say, in the price. We have not been able to identify which is that price bonus. So it has been very difficult to identify which is the actual benefit that the landowner has in economic terms. But what is clear is that it's opening markets. So it's not so much that I gain more, but I gain something at least, or at least I can sell my timber in better market. So that's one benefit. And also both certification schemes are expanding from the traditional, let's say, more marketed timber to ecosystem services, water, carbon, etc. And then we are starting to see the emergence of other labels, more related to agricultural products that take care of the forest, let's say. And this relates mainly with the risk of wildfire mitigation. If you pass to the next. In terms of tradable permits, this might be the also very well known because they relate to carbon sequestration. You know that we have the regulatory market, which in Europe forests are not eligible, but we have wide space within the voluntary market. And here is where we have different initiatives like the Label Bas Carbone in France, biodiversity banking offsetting that has to do with biodiversity credits in France as well, etc. If you pass to the next, then in terms of reverse auctions, we see that some of the tenders in Europe can be assimilated to this, or some interesting initiative in Denmark related to water and forest. If you pass to the next one. And then in terms of direct markets, what we have found is that the examples that have been identified are very much related to the cultural ecosystem services. And here we have a bunch of forms that, again, they might not sound so innovative, like entrance, parking fees, mushroom picking fees, trophy fees related to hunting, forest schools, or forest baths. All of them, depending on the way they are designed, actually give some revenue to the forest owner, but not always. So we are trying to filtering which are the ones that actually bring money to the forest. And if you pass to the last, I think that's the last one. And the question type of agreements, this would be the pure FES, payment for ecosystem services. We have found very few of them. T in Germany, actually our colleague Carsten knows better than we do about this initiative, but this so that the visitors are contributing to improvement of the forest biodiversity in the Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania in Germany, or land stewardship examples in Spain. And if you go, I think that's the very last one. And all this work has been thanks to a big group of contributors. We thank all of them and all of you. And if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one question. Unfortunately, it appears as an anonymous attendee, but the question says the following: interesting figures. Did I understand correctly that wood production has the largest area coverage due to voluntary forest certification? If so, why is voluntary certification not accounted as combination of FES, as the focus is broader than wood alone? Or how do the presenters see this?
I think if you go back to that specific slide,
Yes.
So in certification, both PFC and FSC were categorized as tackling both wood production plus a bundle of forest ecosystem services. But so in our database, we try to keep all the instruments that are very directly related to only wood markets out. So this was for us like certification is included, but not necessarily for its focus in wood, but for its focus in the forest ecosystem services combination. So what we see here is that indeed it covers quite a lot of hectares, and actually is beyond the 800,000 hectares, I think double at least. But then if I would have put the larger graphic, then the other figures the other bars would have been very small. So in terms of extension is quite large. In terms of money that is interchanged due to this, if you pass to the
the next
slide
one
with a budget,
Yeah.
it's not so much. So actually those instruments that are contributing largely to the first ecosystem services combination have to do mainly with the subsidies of the rural development policies. Not so much with the certification, because of this reason that I said, that it's difficult to say which is the price bonus that the landowners actually get for that. So we say that in terms of hectares, it's very wide. In terms of money that they get is not so clear, but is opening markets. So it's other type of impact, and it's very important also, especially in some countries. I'm not sure if this answers the question.
Thank you very much. I would like now to invite the participants. If you have any other question, you can raise your hand and we can open the mic before we move on to the next presentation. Does anyone have any other comment or question? Well, it appears that's it for this section. Oh, there's another one that just came in. Is there any mechanism or organization that buy carbon credits, but not with the aim of utilizing it to use it, but as a mechanism to reduce gross emission?
What does it mean, gross emission, in this context? I don't understand fully the question.
I will open the mic so you can...
Yeah, if the person who has made the question can explain us what do you mean with this question exactly.
So, yeah. Swastika, you have the floor now, so you can, if you'd like to make your question openly.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to ask, there's a mechanism where you can sell carbon credits to companies and they can use it to maybe fulfill their requirements. But is there any organization or mechanism that just buys carbon credit as an incentive to reduce carbon emission as a whole, not as a net, but to prevent any further emission?
Okay, if I understand, this is as a sort of voluntary, so that the company is not doesn't have the mandate to reduce. Is this correct? So you mean yes?
Can I give an example?
Yes, please.
So, for example, I have a forest and I establish a forest in an area that wouldn't have been forested before. So, I gain some through these forests. I contribute to carbon sequestration, and I assume that it would provide some carbon credits that I could sell in the market. And is there any organization that is or mechanism that is willing to buy those credits but not to utilize it? For example, not to meet their carbon requirements for their companies so that they could emit, but just to prevent the carbon credits from going to other companies.
Well, yeah, we have a voluntary carbon market in every country, which is working so far in a very different way for each of the countries. We have some, recently the European Commission issued the European carbon registration, which probably is going to create some coherence across the different initiatives that we have been identifying in each country. Within each country, we have very different examples. For example, in Catalonia, we have the credit card market, which sells jointly biodiversity, water plus carbon credits. So they call them resilience credits. While in other countries is only carbon, yeah, like the Label Carbone in France, and they are sold to whatever is the company that wants to buy them. So in some cases, the motivation is to offset the emissions that they have because they have some sort of quantification estimation, and they want to offset them for whatever reason, probably to have a greener image. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is answering your question. Yeah, so they don't have an obligation. They do that because they want to. The payers, they do that because they want. Let's say.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question, and then we will move to the next presentation. This question by Catherine says, I would like to understand why there are only few examples of market-based instruments tradable permit types. Do you have a recommendation for governments to promote demand for tradable permits?
Thank you. This is a very interesting question. Here, the link with regulation is crucial. The regulation is creating the demand for this type of tradable permits. Unless the companies or the different users, let's say, of ecosystem services have some sort of cap, when they have a cap due to norms, is when they have to accomplish with a certain threshold, and when they exceed the threshold is where they have to compensate. We have seen that the involuntary markets, the amount of transaction, even if it's growing, it's limited. But when there is a regulation that sets this type of limits, like in Liguria with the development, the credits, this is when, it's triggering the market actually. In biodiversity credits in France, there is also a regulation behind it that says that you have to reduce the impacts, but once you have tried to reduce the impacts and you still have impacts, you have to offset them. So the regulation is crucial to create that demand. And once you have the demand, then you can create the market.
Thank you very much, Elena and Ibtissem. We will now move to the next presentation by Luma Vasconcelos and Lavinia Svae from ETI4, Valuing Nature, who will talk about INTERCEDE in practice, advisory, and accelerator services. So the floor is yours.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you. I am Lavinia Svae from ETI4, and I will now present one of the more practical and applied applications of the project INTERCEDE. So specifically, we're talking about two services we're providing as a consultancy: the advisory service and the accelerator service for forest market-based instruments in Europe. So yes, our purpose and why we're here. So ETIFOR is a consultancy, specialized environmental consultancy company based in Padua, Italy, who has a multidisciplinary approach. And what we do is we put nature at the heart of decision and making it by developing science-based solutions. So our role in INTERCEDE is to first set up an advisory service to support 10 to 15 public and private bodies with testing and/or implementing funding initiatives for forest ecosystem services through market-based investment and policy instruments. And then in a second phase, we will select 5 pilots between these 10 to 15 cases to participate in an intensive program of acceleration for the further development of financial mechanisms. So these two are our main tasks here. And the overall objective of the service is to strengthen the business models of the initiatives and to improve the results in terms of efficacy, long-term sustainability, and impact. So in practice, coming a little bit more into the details, first, advisory service. So who is this service directed to? We are thinking of aiming the service to public and private actors who want to or have who want to develop or have developed or are developing schemes and financial mechanisms for forest ecosystem services in particular. And we think it could be relevant for landowners or forest associations or whoever wants to or has established public and private partnerships. What does this mean in practice? Is we will have 2 meetings with the initiatives or these case studies or to share your needs and potential, and we will try to suggest solutions and identify a suitable strategy to mobilize resources. So it's identifying ecosystem services that need improvement, and then the costs and the benefits and all this part. And then you will also get a roadmap report on how to improve some internal planning and move forward. The timeline for this service, we are still in the first preliminary phase, so we will select relevant case studies between May and July, and then this service with all this, with the meetings and the roadmap report will happen from September to December 2026. If you would be interested to apply, we will actually reach out to potential case studies and shortlist the 10 to 15 most relevant ones based on interest, scope, and some other criteria. But if you think this could be something for you or could be interesting, feel free to send us an email and we will consider your case. I'll pass the floor to my colleague Luma.
Thank you, Lavinia. Hi, everybody. So as she just explained, after the advisory part, we intend to move towards the accelerator service. We indeed have in mind to have 5 best initiatives that would be coming initially from the first part of our work in the advisory. But here the idea is to go a bit further and offer something more tailored and also guide and support those in escalating like what they have been doing already. The idea is as well to have a mixed approach in the sense that we will be considering different types of initiatives, those that have already some better management plan and detailed, that I would say, service that's being already designed, but we have in mind as well initiatives that would be at the beginning. And the criteria that will be guiding the first part of the advisory service that will be pretty much considering the scope in the European level, but also other details such as their potential impact, what else they have to support in the sense of like initiatives that are innovative, let's say. But also in this other part of the accelerator, we will be a bit more interested as well in having a broader scope of what will be the long-term impacts. And then we will be involving the stakeholders in online and in-person support, where we intend to be mentoring the meetings, actions, and future activities they will be developing with time. This part should be taking, I don't know, maybe especially, we have this ambition, but hopefully it will work. That should start the beginning of next year, and the service will be especially conducted between February and September 2027. For the next slide, if we can go ahead. We allow you now a bit of space to ask you questions, but we also have something here in parallel that we would like to ask your opinion, in which you are going to be able to react to a few of our main interests in checking people's opinion. So there are two possibilities. You can just come up with your questions, or if we can go a bit ahead. Yeah, we have here a few possibilities for you to react to the reactions you have in your screen. If you see at the bottom, there is a part in which you can express with a little heart. There you have other possibilities to answer to the questions we have here. But before I see there is a question.
Yes, we have a question if you'd like to first answer that.
It is, does the advisory service focus only on European initiatives, or can it be global? Yeah, I can answer. We are aiming at the European level initially, but not necessarily only the Schengen area, let's say, not only what is in the EU level. We are open to possibilities because we had this discussion before. The idea would be to have, yes, the priority for this main European area, but also considering the continent. And if something pops up in a different place, we might consider. But the priority initially would be the European area. I think was the only one, no?
Thank you. Yes, so far it's the only one. So if you want to go ahead with your dynamic, we can do it.
All right, thank you. So we have here a first question, but I think it's not showing with the format. But we can help you in a second. I can check here as well. Just a second. Sorry. The first would be, one moment. What type of support should the advisory service prioritize? Thanks, Lavinia. Then if you see, you have different emojis to react. Being, if you think the governance barriers are the main point to be considered, in this case, you can react with a thumbs up. If you think the market-based instrument design is the most important, you have the heart, or financing pathways, the little fire, or even the plant for policy alignment. Anyone has any contributions in the sense? What do you think would be the most important? Market-based instrument design. Nice. Thanks for your collaboration.
Luma, for
Yes.
example, I just have the thumbs up and the heart. I don't have
Really?
the fire or the plant. I'm not sure if that's the case with the other participants, but maybe that's why there are so many hearts. I don't know.
Then we have a
Yes.
biased situation.
I was noticing the same. We only have the heart. There are other options, but not the fire or the plant.
That's a pity. Yeah, for me as well, in other Zoom situations, we would have the others. That's strange. Yeah, if I give other directions, I think it's going to be very confusing for you. Like, let's substitute the fire for the rocket and the policy alignment, the other plant symbol for the one that seems like a party and fireworks. We can try. Anyways, going for the second question, it would be, what should be the main focus of the market-based instrument accelerator? So let's try with, again, thumbs up for business model refinement, heart for investment readiness. Instead of the fire, we can try the rocket for governance coordination. And if you think impact credibility is the most important, we can try the thing that seems like a firework. I can't actually think about a better name for that. Okay. All right. business model investment management. Okay. Alrighty, and maybe we can move to the third. What's the biggest, barrier for scaling forest market-based instruments initiatives? Again, business models, if you think, then thumbs up. Horde for financing, the rocket, if you want, for governance complexity, and maybe the little firework for environmental credibility. Financing mainly. All right, I think here we have some input from your side. Thanks very much. And if you have further questions, you can reach us out either here or by email later. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation and very nice dynamic. We're sure we can adapt it to the available emojis, but it's a clever way of making everyone participate. And now we will move to the PES Policy Lab, introduced by Professor Karsten. So, Professor Karsten, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Maria. I hope you can see my screen. So good morning, everyone. My name is Carsten Mann, and together with my team, Clemens Fischer, who's joining us, and Gino Garcia, we work at Eberswalde University for Sustainable Development. And our task in the INTERCEDE project is to explore policy options for an adequate EU policy framework for a payment scheme for forest ecosystem services. So linking up to what we just saw with the presentation of Luma, it was good to see so many hard reactions and indicating an interest you have in market-based policy instrument design. And this is actually what we are doing in this task. Like we asked the question, how should a policy or a Europe-wide payment scheme should look like to provide and to incentivize forest ecosystem services? And we would like to explore this question together with you, employing a co-design approach where we assess possible different future options of how such a PES policy design can look like. And we plan to conduct a series of policy workshops, something that we call a PES policy lab, where we elaborate distinct characteristics of such a payment scheme. So basically, we ask you, or we are interested in your opinion of where do you see the major chances for such a PES design? Where do you see the major challenges in such a PES design? What should such a policy provide for you, and where do you see the restrictions for this? And so we explore together the strengths and the weaknesses of different PES design options that should culminate in working towards a future roadmap. And basically, we are planning to conduct two PES policy labs. The first one is where we create kind of a safe experimental space to explore different design options. And we do this with a range of stakeholders where we will invite you in a bit to participate and elaborate different PES designs. So basically what we do is we negotiate a contract in order to identify what are your preferences, where do you see the chances and the challenges. And in the second PES policy lab, we create a space mainly directed to policy decision makers to discuss kind of the outcomes of the first policy lab about the preferred PES design options in order to find solutions to overcome and to deal with the challenges identified and to work towards a roadmap for the sustainable provision of forest ecosystem services. So to give a bit more detail on this first PES policy lab, This is a participatory multi-stakeholder method for policy assessment, which is specifically designed to discuss about your interests, the chances, and the challenges you see when it comes to payments for forest ecosystem services, developed as a co-design approach with a range of stakeholders from practice, so from forest ecosystem service provision, kind of forest managers and owners, different NGOs, businesses, civil society groups, up to policymakers on different levels. The objective of this first PES policy lab is to co-create and to discuss and debate one EU PES design for the provision of forest ecosystem services as a kind of a compromise. So to see where can we reach certain agreement, but also where are the crucial issues that deserve more attention. And for the moment, we think to discuss with you options for better biodiversity conservation, including co-benefits such as water quantity and quality provision and carbon sequestration, to assess the opportunities and challenges, as I said. In a nutshell, what do? Like, we plan to have 3 large stakeholder groups, one group of ecosystem service providers, one group of ecosystem service buyers, and one group of administration. And in 3 different rounds, we discuss then with you of how can such a contract for the provision of forest ecosystem services, such as for biodiversity conservation, look like? And where are the crucial issues when it comes to the duration, the type, or the duration of funding? What measures you see to be important? Who should conduct the monitoring, and so on? And the final output of this lab is then an example of a contract for a payment scheme for the provision of these forest ecosystem services. So now we come to you, and we think this webinar is a good moment to advertise this policy lab. And we invite you to be part of this journey and to be part of this policy lab experiment, looking for forest owners and managers, but also public authorities and political decision makers, as well as further stakeholders with an experience as a provider or a seller of a forest ecosystem service, such as forest owner or manager, or experiences as a buyer for forest ecosystem services, so private or public bodies, organizations, a business representative or entrepreneur, or if you're coming from administration, so a public authority or a ministry or administration, the scope is operating within an EU member state. So leaving it here, so basically we need you for this assessment, and in the following it will be a Prospects Institute and Caroline who will tell you more about the procedure to join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karsten. I would just like to ask the participants if there are any questions before we move to Caroline. Yes, Catherine, I will open your mic so you can address it directly with Karsten.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting webinar. So my question is whether this policy lab is part of the EU nature credits roadmap that is currently ongoing, or that was published last year.
Yeah, hello, Katrin. Thanks for the question. Well, this policy lab is part of the INTERCEDE project, right? So it's an activity of the project, but of course we are aware and linked to ongoing initiatives, of ongoing and former projects, and also being aware of the discussions on EU level. So that will be integrated, but the lab itself is part of the INTERCEDE project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see there are no other questions. So then we are moving to Carolyn Brandt from the Prospects Institute, who will present the INTERCEDE Transdisciplinary Forward Roadmap, key milestones on the path to impact. Carolyn, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can see my slides.
We can.
Excellent. Okay. So we had a little bit of introduction at the beginning about INTERCEDE, which is a Horizon 2020 project. And the aim is at making it Europe's forests more valuable by rewarding forest owners for managing their land in a way that's benefit people and nature. And these benefits are forest ecosystem services, which include climate protection, water management, and recreation. And the overall goal of the INTERCEDE project is to design smart, practical tools that encourage forest owners, private and public, to provide these services now and in the future. And INTERCEDE connects research, policy, and practice through a collaborative approach, which is the transdisciplinary method. And this is what I'm going to share with you this morning. What is the transdisciplinary approach that we use in INTERCEDE? Well, it's the central element of INTERCEDE where we are connecting researchers, policymakers, forest owners, business, and environmental, bringing them together to design, to foster collaboration and knowledge exchange with people from different diverse backgrounds, different goals, different objectives, but one overarching item is being part of the forest ecosystem. And it bridges the gap between science, policy, and practice to address the challenges of FES within Europe. And it's looking at real day scenarios. So not case studies, but actually what's happening now and what will be happening in the future. So all the things that you've heard of from CTFC today, and also the Policy Lab, and also ETIFOR, these are the items that we bring into the transdisciplinary roadmap for INTERCEDE. And this is what our roadmap looks like, very top level. Actually, it looks a little bit busy here, but I'll try to explain it. So the key part, the skeleton of it, are 3 TDFs, which are transdisciplinary forums. We call them TDFs. The objectives are cross-learning and exchange, collaboration and upscaling, and then dissemination and impact. And as you can see, we've already done one in 2024, which was the first year of the project. We've got one coming up in this year, actually next month already, April, in Porto, which is the 28th, 29th of April. And then we've got one which is TBD, which is more towards the end of the project. Now, as part of this roadmap, we also have what we call transdisciplinary working groups, which is small clusters of expertise focused on different themes and objectives, which I will share with you in a minute. And then we have our transdisciplinary webinars, which Effie, Maria, and Carola are hosting today. And today is our first one, and we will be having more throughout the next few years of the project. The next one will be about September, October later this year. And this is where we are at the moment. So we're doing our webinar today. We've got the upcoming TDF, which is about collaboration and upscaling. And also during those 2 days in Porto, we'll also have 2 transdisciplinary working groups as well. So what are these working groups looking at? Well, we've actually renamed them as Forest Solution Advisory Panels, because that's where they are. It's not like today where it's a webinar, we're coming up and it's more of a monologue with some dialogue. It actually is working together on different themes. We have different stakeholders and certain selected consortium members. So actually who we have here with us today, so Eberfalda, CTFC and ETI4 are all members, are actual leads of these working groups. And each group looks at review, discuss the project results, influence the results. They look at upscaling opportunities, addressing environmental, economic links, and also as well looking at supporting integration, innovation and dissemination. And it's a key mechanism for cross-sector learning, stakeholder involvement, ensuring real-world impact. So the first group, we have governance, policy and decision support. And they're looking at policy frameworks, which you've just seen now from Carsten, governance models, decision support tools, modeling trade-offs, and the demand side for FES. And then our second one is looking more at the financing mechanisms, land use and ecosystems, and that's with CTFC, with the MBI, and also with ETI4 as well. So land use practices, financial tools, market-based instruments. Now, that's very top level what the INTERCEDE transdisciplinary journey is about. As Carsten mentioned before, you are invited to join this journey. So for the event, the TDF in Porto, which is an in-person event for 2 days, you can scan the registration here. We only have a few places left, and we are looking for, at the moment, public forest owners or anybody who works in policy. So if you're part of any of those two stakeholder groups, scan the registration, and then you will start the registration process. And for the right stakeholders, there is financial support for your travel and accommodation for while you're there for those 2 days. And it promises to be a very interactive 2 days, talking about the subjects that we've just spoken about today. So we will be working more on the policy lab, on the MBI, and also on the accelerator as well, the advisory services and the accelerator. Now, if you don't fall in those two groups, but you would like to become part of the INTERCEDE transdisciplinary journey, please reach out to me in the chat. I'm going to put my email in there, and then we can look on, would you be interested in one of the forestry panel groups, or maybe then for one of the future TDF, so more on the dissemination side. So that was it, very short, very quick, and this is the stakeholder engagement on how we're bringing everything from the project to work with external stakeholders in a collaborative way. So if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask them while I put my email in the chat.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. I will start wrapping up the session because we're a bit out of time, but if you have any questions, you can also reach out through our emails. And just to wrap up, well, today's presentations have highlighted how Europe's forest ecosystem services depend not only on strong ecological foundations, but also on robust governance, innovative financing mechanisms, and meaningful stakeholder engagement. So we have seen how market-based instruments vary widely across regions and are shaped by governance, economic conditions, and cultural contexts. Advisory and acceleration services can help initiatives strengthen their business models and align the EU-level frameworks. The PES Policy Lab is creating a much-needed space for dialogue between practitioners and policymakers. And finally, how the INTERCEDE Transdisciplinary Forum roadmap is building a structured path toward a long-term impact. So all key messages and insights raised today will fit directly into this forum that Carolyn just mentioned, and where these themes will be explored further in an in-person collaboration setting. So before we close, all registered participants will receive a follow-up email containing the webinar recording, a link to the forum and information, the program, and all the relevant documents that we shared today as the presentations. And we encourage you to explore these resources and remain engaged with the INTERCEDE community. So I would like to thank the speakers for their time and all of the knowledge they shared today, as well as the participants for their time. And I wish you a very pleasant day, and we hope to see you soon again.